Okay, can everybody hear me? Sorry, I've been a little bit busy trying to straighten out my screen issues, so I don't know if I caught anybody in the chat yet or seen anybody in the chat. How's my sound coming out today? So today we're gonna talk about the Bigtree Tech SKR E3 DIP version 1.0. Now I started talking about it last night, couldn't find a cable. Hey Derek, how's it going? I'm gonna actually show you how to load it now. Now that I have the cable, I did realize there were some issues that we're probably gonna experience while I do it. So if you want to ask questions in the chat while I'm setting this up, all I'm going to do is plug in the USB cable and then see what's going on, because I can't see the SD card. So I want to see if it pops up. So currently it's not showing on my computer, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So over here, for actual drives, I don't see it. But if I go to Device Manager, we can check and see what's in there. So under here, we can see that it's actually COM port 15, and to verify that, we can actually disconnect, and I'll show you that real quick. So what I'm going to do to test it is this. I'm going to pop this out. Then I'm going to go back to my desktop where I have Device Manager, and I'm going to verify that COM port 15 is gone. So I'm going to plug it back in to check. And it appears. So we could check the drivers. It says device is working properly, so we know that it's allegedly working. So if I go over to Pronterface, I can probably connect to this. So inside Pronterface, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to COM port 15, and I'm going to say connect. And it says printer is now online. So we know that we've got a connection. We can even check the end stops as a way to verify, and there are no end stops connected, so it says triggered for everything. So we get that we're actually connected. So I'm going to disconnect from here for a moment, and I'm going to go over to VS Code, and I'm going to reset where I started from last night. There's only 3 steps, so let me show you those. So I'm going to go over to Explorer. I'm going to open a folder. I'm going to go to my Downloads folder. I'm going to open up my Marlin and my next Marlin, and then select the folder. Now, some of this is going to be repetitious from last night, but it's kind of necessary. So I'm going to do a clean because there was a previous build there. And I'm going to go to, obviously, Marlin source. If I can click on it. For boards. And I'm going to search on E3_DIP. And this will bring us to the actual board type that we're working with. I'll copy this, then I'll go over to, like always, configuration.h. I'll search on motherboard, not Marlin, and we'll replace the ramps. So I'll paste that there. Well, doesn't look like I pasted it correctly. So let me try that again. Apparently I'm making a mistake. I copied something in the source file wrong, so I'm going to go back. And I'm going to find the E3 DIP. This is the fun part about doing it live. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to minimize that so I can see what I'm doing. Go back here and paste it. So that's fixed. Then we'll go with the default -1 just to see if that works, because I've never actually loaded this board. And then platform IO, we need to fix our default environment. So we'll search on E3 DIP again with the underscore. And we'll copy this for our default environment and then go back up to the top. And paste it over your previous default environment. And then all we're going to do is do a build with the check mark. This may fail, which it's been known to happen. And if you haven't noticed, my builds are a lot quicker because I've actually upgraded the computer that I'm working with. So I'm going to check on the chat real quick. Let's see. Ornor, the MKS Gen L version 2, I could probably do that in a couple minutes. I could also do the SKR. Well, I'm not sure which SKR you're referring to, but I can do the Nano for the Robin. I can actually show you how to load firmware live. Then someone's saying Team C solder in. I'm trying to understand. If you want, you could probably put that in your native language and I'll try and figure out what you're trying to say. I don't know what you're trying to say, Ton. But if you want to put it in a language that's native to you, I can look it up. TMC drivers. Or is it Time C drivers? I think you're saying TMC, which is this. I don't know if it's a keyboard issue with the keyboard you're working from. Okay. I'll do a little bit on TMC drivers today, but I want to try and avoid it only because I've been moving my setup around a lot. So we'll save that till a little bit later. I'm going to do the MKS next, but let's figure this out. So I'm going to go back over and look inside here. It looks like the build passed. It took 20 seconds, which is rather fast. And so now let's try and see if we can upload. I'm not sure this is going to work. I'm pretty sure it's not going to work, but let's see what happens. This is just going to build or take what's already there in the build and push it to the drive for COM port 15, as long as I'm not connected in Pronterface, which I'm not. So let's see what we got here. It looks like it failed the program. It can't seem to see the drive. So let's try a different tact, and I'll show you what that is. We're going to go over to our workbench, and we're actually going to unplug it for a second, and we're going to pop out the drive, and we're going to test out this new drive I got. I'll put an affiliate link in the description for this. I don't know how well it's going to work. I was kind of upset last night when it wasn't working well, but you just slide it in and push it down, then close it, and then plug it in. So just so people know, no one's paying me or sponsoring me to do these tutorials, but I'm grateful that a lot of people are doing super chats. That's one way to offset the cost of me purchasing all these parts. So what we see here on this drive, it looks like they've got a G code for something. So that's a printer file of some type. And then they have a firmware.cur. So what we need to do is actually place, so I'll actually put this where you can see it because I'm talking too much without realizing I didn't change screens. This is the drive right now, fresh out of the printer board as it came. So it says firmware.cur, and then it's got a G-code file, which I think is a test print. So we're going to place a new firmware on there. So I'll show you where we're going to do that. So I'm going to go back to VS Code. And inside VS Code, there's actually a .pio folder. So we're going to open that. We're going to go to the build folder. Then we're going to click on the chipset folder, which is the chipset used for this board. We're going to right click and we're going to do reveal and explore. And I'll bring this up so you can see it in 2 seconds. Hopefully the build isn't damaged. If it is, we'll have to rebuild, but that's not likely. So here it is. Inside here, we're looking for firmware.bin and I don't see it, so we're going to have to rebuild real quick. So I'm going to close out of that folder and go back to VS Code and click the checkbox. So let me bring you back with me here. So what happens is it probably flushed the build that we were working with, but I don't know for sure. So let's give it about 20 seconds and see what happens. And then I'll peek into the chat and see what's going on. Actually, it took 6 seconds because it's already there, allegedly. So I'm going to go back to Reveal in Explorer, and hopefully we'll find this file. If not, we've got other issues. So I'm bringing it back over to the desktop so you can see. I'm going to go in here, and we've got firmware.bin, which is a relief. So let's right click on that, and we're going to send it to our USB drive, like so. Now, after that's done, we're going to extract the USB from the computer, and I'll show you what we'll do on the workbench real quick here. So I'm disconnecting the drive, taking out the actual drive here, and I'm placing it inside. In theory, we're going to load the firmware when we plug this in, and maybe we'll see a drive. I don't know how this turns out. So it's going to take a second to load. And apparently we're not seeing any changes, as in a drive that shows up. So I'm guessing that it's just USB communication and there's no USB drive. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. On certain boards, you'll actually see a virtual drive. So I'm going to bring you over to the desktop and hopefully bring up... transition over there, sorry about that. I'm going to bring up Device Manager. Now, it may have popped on my other screen, so you won't see it for a second until I bring it over. So here's the Device Manager. If you're looking through here, what we're looking for, we already have a COM port, so we're good there. But there's a USB or disk drive device that's not showing up. So I'll show you an example of this real quick. Let me plug in, let's see what I got here. I'll find a MKS board real quick, or an SKR. Makes more sense. It's gonna take me a second to find one. Got apparently 3 boards here. Here we go. I got an SKR 1.4. I'm going to plug this or unplug this for a second so you can see what's going on. So I'm actually going to plug this one in and just put it off to the side. And if we look now, here I have a SKR plugged in. You can see that there's a drive. I'm going to close that and go back to Device Manager and show you what's going on with disk drives. Now it's saying a Marlin SD drive, so apparently that functionality does not exist on this board as I know it. So let's go back over to the desk or workbench here for a second. And I'm going to plug in the other board again. And hopefully I haven't re-enumerated my USB. I don't think I have, but we'll find out. And we'll go into Pronterface and see what's going on. We can connect to it, that's good. And when we do the M119, we see the actual end stops are still triggered, which is good. So that's how we load it, but I'm actually gonna pull out the drive for a second, being the SD drive. I know I'm probably still on the workbench. And I'm going to plug this back in to the actual computer and see what happened. So let me bring up the actual desktop of my computer so you can see what's occurring. So over here, you can see that we just did a build a couple of minutes ago and it loaded. If we wanted to reload that build again, we could always right click and rename it firmware.bin and then delete the rest of it. And this would load it again, in theory. So let's test the theory because I've never done this. I'm going to disconnect this. I'm going to plug it back in. Show you the workbench real quick here. And let's see if it reloads. It looks like it's reloading because it's flashing. Then it should beep. So it's all good. So I'm going to disconnect it. I'm going to pop it out real quick. Then I'll pop this back in to the drive and back into the computer and see what happened. So let me bring you over to the desktop real quick here. And as you can see, it's renamed it back to Cur because it reloaded. So let me see what other questions we have here real quick. Okay, so let's see what we got. The next one was the MKS Gen L version 2. Give me a moment to see if I can find that board real quick. It's in one of my boxes. So I'm actually going through, I have a lot of boards you've never seen before. Some of them are more difficult to work with than others, so I don't usually do them. But the MKS, I know I have the board someplace around here. I just had to find it. What do we got here? Well, this board's not labeled very well, but I think it's a Gorilla or whatever they call the board. So it's not in that container. So got a couple more containers to go through here. Might not have in the room, but I know I have the board. Now, give me a minute to go in the other room and see if I've got it there. Obviously, I don't have everything at my fingertips. So this one might take a minute to find. Actually, I think I just found it. Yeah, so here it is. I'll show you that in a second. But first I'm going to show you how to clean up the actual build right here. Because right now we're using a build that we just modified. So I'm going to start fresh. So I'm going to go back over to VS Code for a second just to clean up this folder. So what I need to do is click here to close folder because it'll lock if I try and delete it. And then I'm going to go back over and actually delete it on my desktop. So I'm going to delete this folder for a second. Then I'm going to right click and I'm going to extract all. And then click extract, and that'll take a moment. And while that's going on, let me get this scene changed on the desktop real quick. So I've got to open this container up. And I'll show you what I'm doing.